EVs, especially Teslas, have been on the news for catching fire, losing control, and just accidents overall. The truth is that only 0.01% of Teslas have caught fire, and incidences where Teslas lost control stands at one crash for every 4.85 million miles driven. The best reason anyone would get an electric car is to lower emissions. Cutting right to the chase, the three things I found was that building these vehicles comes at the expense of some of the most already vulnerable people. They are definitely not 100% eco-friendly. And 3, they beat internal combustible engines or ICE engines by a milestone when it comes to helping save the planet. Now, before anyone gets bothered over what they think they know, watch this entire video. I'm going to show you both EV and ICE vehicles and how they compare or contribute to climate change. Let's get started. The key aspect of this whole video is about zoning in where emissions are emitted the most. In the case of EVs, it's during the process of being made. Now, the biggest greenhouse gas emitters are the batteries, which are made out of lithium ion. The problem here is that lithium ion is extracted from a location that some have come to know as the lithium triangle, and it's a connection between Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. Again, the majority of the world's lithium is extracted from here. This means power for not only electric cars, but for laptops and phones all around the world. Specifically, Salar de Uyuni is the world's largest salt flat. Workers have to drill holes through the crust to bring up the brine, which is basically salted water, and where the lithium sits. Now, after letting it evaporate for 12 to 18 months, the lithium is ready to be extracted among the other salts. This process is like a bloodsucker for the local water supply. Although rich in natural resources, Bolivia is a poor nation. Protests have erupted and people have been angered due to profits to foreign exploitations. Still, this has done little to benefit the community, and little to no jobs have been offered to them from this huge business venture. Now, talks of training locals in scientific and technological fields stem all the way back to 2008, but so far not much has been done. Now, for 1 ton of lithium, 500,000 gallons of water are needed. Not very eco-friendly. In Chile's Salar de Atacama, we've already used up to 65% of its water supply just to extract lithium. Now, this has led to extreme water shortages that have made it hard to grow crops and maintain their livestock. Now, another essential point is the contaminated air and water. In Tibet, for example, Chinese lithium mining has leaked chemicals like hydrochloric acid into the Liqui River, which resulted in the poisoning of fish and the killing of livestock. And in Argentina, natives of the Salta and Catamarca provinces have alleged that the operations of lithium mining companies have contaminated the streams. Now, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but lithium is only 6% of an EV's components. Advocates of lithium mining, however, maintain their position that lithium-ion batteries are essential in the fight against the adverse effects of global warming. Likewise, cobalt is also problematic and a part of EV batteries. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, where most cobalt mines can be found, artisanal-like workers doing dangerous work use pickaxes and shovels to dig into the earth and gather cobalt for the equivalent of a few hours a day. What's worse is the demand for cobalt has militias involved. They abduct and recruit children from every single part of Congo, drag them hundreds of miles from their homes, and put them to work. Now, the few dollars the children make per day then get handed over to the militia. Worst of all, digging in open-air pits has resulted in adults and children being buried alive when tunnels suddenly collapse. So while some do this voluntarily, the conditions are in no way okay, and kids are definitely the most exploited of them all. Now, these stories never make their way out of Congo, and it makes you wonder what more people would think if they were to find this out, and if they would even still purchase or support EV vehicles. But before we keep going, hi, my name is Kim, and welcome to the Green Lab Coat. If you found any value in this video so far, I'd appreciate it if you'd give it a like. And for more videos backed by science and research and on the environment, make sure to subscribe. While it takes about 2 metric tons of CO2 to produce an economy-size EV, it can take up to 17 metric tons for the larger ones. Now, this brings us to what happens to the batteries after their first life. Now, recycling the batteries is another challenging task that people still haven't really figured out. The big size of the batteries causes problems with storage, and because it's made up of very volatile components, they sometimes catch fire in the warehouses. Not too many Tesla batteries have needed recycling because they're still so new. So manufacturers are basically still trying to figure out how to do this effectively so to not have to mine for a brand new battery. Now, after stripping the battery down into a powder, then turning it into an acid, it leaves them with the individual components of the battery to resell. Although cobalt is profitable, lithium can be mined for cheap, so it's almost pointless to recycle plants. Also, I first thought that reselling cobalt would solve the child labor problem. Surely a lot less cobalt would need to be mined if we have an abundance already to recycle. But then I learned that companies like TexPower are attempting to phase out cobalt so to stop the horrific acts going on in the DRC. And this brings me to one more thing I want to mention involving China. Now, China reportedly owns 15 of 19 cobalt mines in Congo. These were purchased in 2002, and they now are one of the biggest sellers of EV cars. China is. Now, this country is known for wanting to capitalize on everything, and it wouldn't be surprising that they predicted EVs were the future. People were going to need cobalt to make EVs, so why don't we, China, own cobalt mines, so people have to go through us. Now, going back to recycling, this is a great thing, but recycle companies really won't see the worth if no cobalt is involved. Believe me, I'm not complaining. Even though the recycle system isn't profitable right now, it doesn't mean it won't be in the future. Now, the forecast of people buying electric cars is expected to keep growing. Over the total course of an EV's lifespan, it will release around 28 to 29 metric tons of CO2, which is definitely not a lot. Additionally, I wanted to consider the argument against EVs that don't involve the environment but are more so convenient issues. Now, getting into an accident in a Tesla, whether it's your fault or not, means that 1, parts can take forever to come. 2, brand new vehicles can take months to get delivered. And 3, when the lithium-ion batteries catch fire, which according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is rare, it's a lot hotter and a lot harder to put out. And for these reasons, an insurance attached to an EV will be higher. And lastly, charging stations aren't abundant yet. Living in California is ideal, as so many states don't have the same quantity of charging stations. But again, I see this changing. Now, if you're one for security, getting an EV is not ideal right now, as you probably want to wait until you're able to take a road trip without worrying if you're able to charge your car. And if you're worried about all these Teslas crashing after being put in self-drive mode, I found this chart to show us that the average of car crashes stemming from this setting was actually lower than when the Tesla was being manually driven and compared to ICE vehicles. Alright, so we pretty much covered EVs. Now we're going to take a look into internal combustible engines or ICE vehicles. Now, they're still mining, but instead, it's mining ore for steel. Then, when transported to the showroom before it's picked up by you, more greenhouse gas emissions are emitted, for a total of 6 to 7 metric tons of CO2 in production. This is way lower than when EVs are being built. Now, this isn't much, but the next part is where ICE engines get a bad rep. ICE engines have to fuel their cars with gasoline over and over and over. Since 2015, 88 to 95 million oil barrels per day are produced worldwide. That is insane. Now, this involves digging into the earth or ocean so it can be refined into rubbers, metals, plastics, and other things used to build more cars. Approximately, every year, 260 to 280 billion metric tons of CO2 is being emitted to help us get this gasoline. Now, the worst part is when oil spills happen that kill hundreds and hundreds of sea creatures. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, the average passenger vehicle emits about 404 grams of CO2 per mile. In total, anywhere from 56 to 57 metric tons of CO2 is used over its lifetime. This is not even including oil refineries. That's more than double of that what an EV vehicle produces. And according to a study by Exeter and Cambridge, electric cars lead to lower carbon emissions overall, even if the electricity comes from fossil fuels. So if it comes from clean energy, however, it's much, much more effective. Lastly, an article by the Daily Mail attempted to say that if every nation achieves their EV goal, it will only lower the global temperature by 0.0001 degrees Celsius. Now, what I've learned, however, is that any change in global temperature is always significant because obviously it's such an astronomical thing in such an astronomical unit of measure. Now, in the end, the electric car systems aren't perfect, but I strongly believe that they're gonna keep improving. At the rate at which technology improves overall, I can see major benefits happening. Now, people can use all these mumbo-jumbo analogies, give you all these different numbers and scenarios about the emissions of EV batteries. But in the end, EVs still win with emissions overall. According to Business Insider, Tesla drivers predominantly make over 100K each year, so these cars are definitely not for the poor. Now, I do also see these prices coming down after more and more people buy them. And at the same time, governments should give us incentives in order to buy these cars, as the incentives right now are more for people with money. This will, after all, benefit the environment, so they shouldn't be expensive. Now, saving the planet shouldn't come at the expense of other people. If we can continue the phase out of cobalt, we would neither need to deal with child labor or going through China. Additionally, the least we can do is give jobs to locals in the lithium area. They're giving us their water, their crops, their livestock, and we're also contributing to their pollution. We can at least give them decent paying jobs. And then moreover, EVs are better for our health. Air pollutants from gasoline and diesel powered vehicles cause asthma, bronchitis, cancer, and premature death. If we're going to go for energy, we might as well go for clean energy, as everything else is making us sick as it is. And like we always say, in the end, the choice is yours.